You there, Lisa? All right. We are now live on YouTube. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Oh, sweet. So I couldn't be happier to have you today. I'm glad you decided to tell your story to everybody that's listening and watching. Tell me a little bit about where you started. Talk a little bit about your journey.
So I come from Brazil. We had a socialist government, and my mom was part of the. She was an attorney for the opposition. So as you can imagine, she went a few long years without being able to find employment. And I find that one of the things that are very important, are the most important to me, actually, is setting youth in the path that they can actually succeed. And sometimes we don't realize that public policy is a big part of it. So me and my brother, as my mother was struggling, to find work as a political attorney again, we had to step up, and we had to, from a young age, navigate. I had, as soon as I turned 14, I got my worker's license, which was the minimum age, and I spent my birthday there to get that worker's license. So I navigated through the system, trying to learn, trying to earn income, trying to find different opportunities. And it's very important to me that we make decisions as a society that allows the youth to thrive, so that people can find answers to their problems in a very easy manner, not just relying on government and public policy and etc., but just relying on their own effort and their own hunger to succeed.
It's interesting because I've traveled all over the world. I've probably been to 30 different countries. And as you think about it, in other countries, it's more appreciated, the opportunity to be an entrepreneur, than it is in America. Do you see that yourself?
Yeah, yes, I do. So I think that one of the issues that I have, particularly, this administration has been good about it, but particularly one of the issues that I have is that as my mother was an attorney, I was able to grow up with a certain level of formal education. She would put me to read through court proceedings or some of the documents that she was preparing, so that I could look for grammatical errors and stuff like that. And so when you have a government that is focused on, unionizing and lots of labor laws, and when they're doing that to an extent that is actually choking the businesses, and they're adding additional regulation, and they're adding taxes and things like that, that are, detrimental to somebody who's actually starting, it can be an absolute losing scenario. And so when I moved to the United States, I thought, it's going to be much easier. I try to navigate that on my own. I try to, I have a lot of entrepreneurial ideas that I wanted to put together, and I have. And so I wanted to create my own companies. I wanted to do different things, but then you run into a localized, it varies by state, but you run into bureaucracy, you run into unnecessary things that, if you're a young person and you're not used to all that style of legal and accounting and things like that, you're just lost. You're looking at it and you can't understand. You feel like that's not meant to you, like it's some kind of reality that you can accomplish, especially if you're coming from a simple background. I don't know if public schools teach kids on how to put a business together, how to set up taxes, how to things that they can navigate through, how to put together their company's website. What are some of the things that they need to do? And so when you're faced with this storm of bureaucracy, as a young person, it's complicated. And I think that, I thought that in America that would be less. I thought that there would be more, people will be more motivating of youth. But I do see that in reality, there's a constraint, and I feel like that's related to that's growing. That is related to crony capitalism. That is related to big companies and monopolies who lobby for regulations, and they keep the young people out of the market, because the more regulations, not the young people, the young
Entrepreneur.
entrepreneurs. And so what they do is that they lobby the politicians for a huge amount of regulations that if you're starting, you can't afford to comply with. They can, but you can't. So you can't even compete. You can't get to their level. You can't enter the market. And so they become a monopoly, an oligopoly, whatever. And what is really free market about that? We are, putting so much effort and so much energy into sending kids to school to get degrees. Why aren't we putting the same amount of effort into teaching them how to pursue their dreams and how to set up a business?
That's actually an amazing point. Who are some of your favorite entrepreneurs right now?
So you wouldn't necessarily know them, because I try to surround myself with people who are hustlers and go-getters. And so, it's easy for you to choose somebody that you don't understand to idolize, or somebody that you don't know, somebody that is a public figure. To me, particularly, I like to look at my friends like that. See, for example, one of my best friends, he has 4 children. He is from Puerto Rico. And he's always, he's a veteran. He's always struggling, always hustling, but he's also working really hard, developing his own companies, studying, getting more certifications through all of this. So I idolize that. I idolize people around me who are everyday people, but are able to overcome all of that, because I know it isn't easy, and I wish it was.
What's amazing is, and I'll turn you on to some of these entrepreneurs that we're connected with, but there's a couple of great success stories here recently. There's a girl that created a digital course on flipping iPhones, and she's literally found a way to make over $100,000 in the last 90 days. And the advent of digital knowledge, the advent of being able to create a masterclass that teaches people a subject matter of how to make money in a certain vertical, that is probably the fastest growing area where people have the ability to literally take what's inside their head and put together something of value that people consider valuable and will buy.
Yeah, absolutely. So that is a way that the youth has been able to circumvent the system. So the internet is amazing. So if we didn't have the internet, things would have been much harder, considering the amount of crony capitalism that we're living through. And I know that people on the left and on the right, they complain. The left, they say, oh, capitalism is terrible. And on the right, they say, oh, leftism is terrible. But I think that when you look at how our society is set up right now, everyday individuals are not given a chance to succeed, because for example, in politics, every 2 years you have to put $20 million into a campaign. So if I wanted to run, or you wanted to run, or anyone wanted to run, who has $20 million to throw away every 2 years? Nobody.
Kanye West.
Um, Corporations do. Sorry, I was on mute. I always do that on Zoom.
Yeah, no worries. I was going to say, okay, did I mute you?
No, I'm sorry, my bad. Corporations do. So they, if you look at people on the right and on the left, they're being funded by the exact same corporations. And so they're being lobbied for regulations that make the market so much harder. So young people are having to navigate through this society through means of internet, through means of cryptocurrency, through means of, all of these different things and these different opportunities that are coming up. but at the same time, it should be easier. It should be a mainstream avenue where people are getting education on how to succeed from their school, where people are set up from a young age. How can you pursue what you want and succeed on it in an easy, understandable manner that is not trying to pretty much find a way through the system. Is more like you're being you know
Yeah, you
at,
mentioned
at,
cryptocurrency. Did you get in on the Dogecoin rally?
no.
No, no Dogecoin.
No, but it's things that I'm looking at, amongst other things. So I'm a big proponent of using the internet to get yourself out there, and I feel like it has worked particularly well in my case for my message, because I don't know if mainstream companies, even though they say they would love to hear a little bit more about what I have to say, I don't think that they would necessarily give me that space. So I had to conquer that space on my own. I had to conquer influence on my own. And that's how we are right now as youth. We're basically blazing our own trail.
So what are some of the things that you're involved in right now, entrepreneurial? What are some of the things that you're doing to further your entrepreneurial spirit?
So when I first started, and I guess just can get a little bit into the details, the nitty gritty of it. But when I first started, I wanted to invest in private equity. So I opened a business in Florida. Then the next thing is that I wanted to do some e-commerce. So I opened another company for that. And as I moved to North Carolina, I opened a nonprofit. Now in Florida, it was much, much easier, incredibly easier to just set up your company. And it felt like the state was giving me a little bit of a foundation, a little bit of support in a way that I could, take care of it much easier. In North Carolina, it's an absolutely madhouse. Like, it's just very, very complicated. Their website is a mess. Everything is just not user friendly. And you have to understand that this new generation that's coming up, they're used to a different level of service than we are. And so to them, that they're not going to be able to navigate a website like that. They're not going to get on the phone and wait 2 hours to speak to a customer service representative. They're just going to feel like, maybe this isn't for them. So it takes a lot of grit to thrive in certain situations. I know that California is particularly difficult, and some other states. So it's just that's my personal experience on it.
So talk a little bit about your nonprofit. What are you trying to achieve?
So my nonprofit, so much. Basically, I just decided to take a break from that because there were so many different things that I was adding to the table. For example, a documentation on the board of directors, documentation on the executives, and having like all kinds of very formal things, like having to every board of director meetings had to be formalized, and I had to submit documentation and changing of attorneys, changing of all of that. So I was like, I'm done with this. I'm done with this for right now. And it's sad because it's a dream that I had, things that I wanted to do with that nonprofit. And so basically the concept behind it was that I felt like there are so many people on the right, so many people on the left talking about how their side doesn't do anything, how the other side doesn't do anything. Well, why don't we stop complaining and actually do something? Why don't we stop focusing on the other side and just focus on putting value out there? That was the concept of the nonprofit. I wanted to add value to the community. and especially based on the premise that young people could use a hand as they're trying to grow and navigate through this part of society. So through this, job market and all of that. So for example, I wanted to go into communities, and I wanted to put together nonpartisan job events like interview coaching, job coaching, how to write your resume, things like that. And I wanted to make the link with local businesses like, Chamber of Commerce, so that the people that got that information on how to write their resume, they had the direct link, a direct email, a person that would be expecting to receive a resume and then put it in a database or something in their end, where we could get these people, give them a little bit more value than just, here, because on the internet, they have tips on how to write their resumes, but I wanted to also give them that extra step of maybe, a recruiting agency or something like that they will be able to look forward to, not just putting the work, but also knowing that as soon as they're done fixing their resume, there's somebody waiting to do something about it with it.
So we have 4 candidates right now running for president. We have Trump, Biden, Kanye West, and Brock Pierce. Talk a little bit about some of the candidates that are running for president and what your views are.
So, yeah. Kanye West, let's start with that one. That one's easier. No, let's start with the other one, because the other one I'm not familiar with, so I'm not able to speak a whole lot on him.
Brock Pierce?
Mm-hmm.
He's a crypto entrepreneur. He is very much the voice of the middle. He's trying to give people a platform, a platform where they can have a voice, where everyone's voice counts.
So there it is. I mean, I'm gonna look into him a little bit more and see what he's all about. He's running as an independent.
He is.
Okay, cool. I will look into him. That's very interesting.
That resonates well with you, I take it. I could see in your facial expression that resonated well with you.
Yeah. I believe that, if young people, they aren't lazy, they just need a little bit of, sometimes your family or your society, your community.
Leadership.
You got it.
Super important. So how about the other 2 candidates, Trump and Biden?
So Kanye West is the same thing. Let's not forget about Ye.
Okay.
He's the same thing. I don't know much about his agenda. I think that, he is just not, his mind is not in the right place, though he does have the support of Elon Musk, which is a big, entrepreneur, and he is interesting. So maybe the 2 together will be able to put something interesting in place.
I think Tesla broke all-time highs today, by the way.
Nice.
Elon Musk made an extra $1.8 billion today.
Nice.
Not a bad day.
Yeah, he'll be able to put that towards the campaign.
Exactly. Well, I don't know if he can put all of it. I think there's certain limitations.
Yeah, for sure. Biden is, again, the left, they have this this idea that as you regulate companies, you're making life easier for the employer. It's a humanitarian approach, when in reality, not really, because the companies who are able to get away with it, or the companies that have money to challenge those things, they're not concerned about any of it. It's the people at the bottom, the people who are trying to have their small businesses that can't actually compete at all. So when you have that situation of adding a lot more regulations, what you're doing in reality is that you're creating unemployment, you're creating poverty, you're creating all of that. It's not helping the people. So I think that's one of their the things that they were pushing was a higher minimum wage. And minimum wage, it goes up with inflation, supposedly. And it's not something that should be going up just because when you increase the minimum wage, you're also increasing the value of goods. Companies are not going to absorb that into their own, profit. They're just going to throw that to the consumer. So something that was costing maybe $10 is going to cost now 15, because that the cost is being paid, passed on to you. And so the people who are getting paid $15, they also have to consume, their consumers on their end. So now the goods that so basically their purchasing power doesn't change at all. We're just contributing to inflation. And the minimum wage could be $100 an hour. You still have that issue. People will still be in poverty. So what is actually the solution for the problem that they want? This isn't it. It isn't.
Bitcoin. Bitcoin's the solution.
Yeah, exactly. I love Bitcoin. I love cryptocurrency. That the whole concept of it, take away all of that, the
Government
bullshit.
control.
You got it.
When you take the government out of money, this is actually a very good question, because you represent the future of America, the future of the world. You're in that age range where, your perspective on money is an interesting perspective. When you look at Bitcoin and how it's autonomous and has no allegiance, no connection to government control, how does that make you feel?
So I really like that, especially because, in a system as ours, and in the way that things are right now, everybody's so divided that, 4 years from now, a new president will come in, or things. So there's a lot of political and social influence when it comes to dollar or markets or things like that. I have money invested in the stock market. And let me tell you, this past few months have been quite the ride, because it's much more, I guess, susceptible to politicage, is susceptible to all these different things that aren't necessarily good for the investor. The investor wants to, focus on stability and growth, and using their skills to make money. But now they have to pay attention on what Trump tweeted or what Nancy Pelosi tweeted. And in the end, I don't think that that's, something that it adds a whole new level of complexity to something that shouldn't necessarily have it.
What do you think of some of the cities right now that are going through major homeless issues? And example, Seattle, which had the CHOP, where a certain group of people wanted to literally take over a part of a city and turn it into an unsightly part of the city. And that's actually, I think it's happening in New York City also. What do you think about some of the ways that we're starting to see parts of America almost become unrecognizable?
I think that the writing has been on the wall. My dog is drinking water. So
what kind of dog do you have?
I have no idea.
No idea. Big dog, small dog?
So he's a medium dog, a medium puppy. Where were we? We were talking.
We were talking about New York City and some of the cities that you look around in the United States today, they're almost unrecognizable. You look at the homeless issue in Los Angeles and San Francisco, and you start to say to yourself, are these representative of America? Is this what we think of when we think of America?
So I think the writing has been on the wall. And again, I think that, people are looking for answers to a problem that is extremely valid, but they're looking for it in the wrong place. They blame capitalism, which we don't actually have. We have crony capitalism. We don't have free market capitalism. We have the farthest thing from free market capitalism that I can possibly imagine. We have this weird monster that paints itself as capitalism, but it isn't. So people are blaming this, and they're completely misguided. They're blaming businesses as a whole. They're blaming, looking for, being ambitious and looking for wealth as the reason for, they're blaming the rich for the situation of the poor. When in reality, what they're doing is that they're hurting small businesses. And a lot of those small businesses are owned by minorities. They're owned by immigrant families. They're family-owned businesses, and these are the businesses that help pay for the education of the newer generations, that help, you know, help the community thrive. So not necessarily all businesses are bad. Those businesses are the ones that are actually getting people out of the situation that they're in, but they don't care. They put it all in one single pool of capitalism is bad, businesses are bad, private ownership of, you know, businesses are bad, and they're extremely misguided. They're going by I guess an indoctrination line of thought in which they search for the solutions in the wrong places, and that's how it happens. They're so frustrated that they lash out without really knowing what they're lashing out on.
Well, Brady Shackelford wants to know if you miss Brazil.
Sure.
What do you miss about Brazil?
The beaches.
The beaches, yeah, they look beautiful. When right now it's pretty warm here in the States, what's the weather like in Brazil these days?
So in my hometown, it's always hot because it's right by the equator, and we don't have really different seasons.
How's Brazil doing economically? I know that they had the World Cup there and they built these massive stadiums, but after the World Cup left, those stadiums basically became eyesores.
So I was involved in the protests that led from the building of those stadiums, which eventually led to the you know, the impeachment of the leftist president. We were able to bring, especially in my part of the country, in my hometown, we were able to bring 100,000 people out. People weren't happy because everybody was starving. There were no roofs on public schools, no food, no nothing. There was widespread corruption, but yet we were building, you know, billion-dollar stadiums that were never going to be used to capacity again.
Crazy, huh? And there was not only that, but there was a ton of corruption in the building of those stadiums. There were people lining their pocket with millions of dollars.
Yeah, it was just basically it. I feel like it was a slap on the face of the people when in many ways we're saying that same situation happened in America, especially when it comes to the lockdowns, where certain businesses are allowed to open, but other businesses are not.
Think about that for a second. You've got Home Depot opening up, but the small restaurateur who's trying to survive, he can't open up, he can't serve his food.
Yeah, I mean, it makes absolutely no sense when you look at it, when you look at the whole, you know, concept of how things are being done. They're being done to destroy people who are the most vulnerable, people who are actually, you know, Walmart doesn't bother them if they stay a day closed. But to a business that doesn't have a whole lot of, you know, cash set aside, it makes the whole difference. It's how they pay their bills. A lot of these people, you know, they don't have, you know, high top quality attorney, top quality accountants looking for, you know, investors looking how to maximize their profits. They're just everyday people trying to survive. So when you put yet another roadblock in their lives, you're causing an impact on the people that you should be protecting.
So Rafael Ortega wants to know, do you think that President Trump will get reelected?
You know, all these questions, huh? It's a tough one. I think that Trump, one of the biggest things that he had going for him was the economy. And I think that the longer we are able to, you know, the longer we enable these governors to go off on their own and go rogue and put their states back in lockdown, I think that people are going to start wondering, and it's a valid concern. It's a valid concern I don't know if, there's mail-in ballots, which, they can be difficult to predict whether they're gonna have fraud or not. I mean that in a way that sometimes you send in the ballot with your signature and they send it back saying that your signature doesn't match, when in reality, it's your signature. So
Don't you find it crazy that with as much technology as we've developed in America today, that we haven't found a way to allow people to vote from a mobile device yet?
that's an interesting concept. So probably have to involve some kind of unique identity, like let's say your fingerprint or your social whatever.
Or
But that
maybe your
also,
facial ID?
yeah, but that also includes it goes into another point of we don't even have voter ID, right? Because
How crazy is that? I go to try and rent a Sea-Doo, a little motorized motorcycle on the water. I need an ID. If I want to drive a car, I need an ID. I want to go buy some liquor, I need an ID. I want to go on a plane, I need an ID. If you want to vote, you can go vote at 10 different places. They'll never ask you for an ID.
yeah, well, let's not give people any any ideas here.
Trust me, in Chicago, you don't have to give anybody an idea. They already figured out.
Yeah. I mean, it's sad. It's how it is. The system is completely broken, and at this point, we have to realize: is there anything really actually worth saving? We're under this impression of like, things are good. We have a country that was stable just a few months ago. I feel like it was almost like a volcano that was ready to explode. And what we can do at this point is take a really strong look at our institutions and figure out how we can, improve them in the way that our founding fathers intended, in the way that allows the people in our country to thrive with, the values within the values of freedom, of prosperity, and capitalism, true free market capitalism, versus whatever we have now, which is never-ending bureaucracy, never-ending, roadblocks, and just the people at the top, the elites, the political elites, they keep getting richer and they keep making the decisions that benefit themselves. But in reality, so they give millions and billions of dollars for their own pet institutions, but they give you $1,200 in the UBI, right? One time, $1,200. How's that going to pay the rent? So it's like they're taking care of themselves, but they're not taking care of us. And I'm not for UBI, but I'm also not for closing the economy. So
I couldn't agree with you more.
it's
I think if you look around and you see the states that have had the hardest impact on local businesses, in almost 90% of the cases, they're run by Democratic governors who overbearingly put pressure on the local businesses, yet in the name of science. But here you've got protesters running around the streets and they don't have an issue about that. I think we find ourselves in a very bad situation where governors and mayors can actually strangle and cut off the lifeblood of local entrepreneurs.
Yeah, but also I feel like a lot of the times we're lost in these terminologies. So the left, they worry about things like regulation. They add additional regulations to make sure that the workers are fine, to make sure that the environment is more humane. So when they hear words like cash flow, when they hear words like investment, when they hear words like entrepreneurship and economy, or they're ruining the economy, they're not worried about this invisible economy monster. But when you realize, when you dig a little bit deeper, you understand that when I'm talking about ruining the economy, I'm talking about leaving people unemployed. I'm talking about people who are not going to have a way to put food on their table. How are they going to go, take care of their families? How they're going to feed their children? And the people who are the most vulnerable are going to suffer the most. And so we're basically ruining the lives, the livelihoods of people. in a way that, the elites, they don't care. The owner of Walmart, he's still going to have money. His store is still going to be open. But the guy that's struggling to keep his business afloat, the guy that keeps 10 employees, and all of those 10 employees, everybody is going to suffer in a way that, we see a big challenge of the situation is that there is no end to this. It's almost like indefinite. There's the second wave, the third wave, the whatever wave. So people don't really know when they're going to be able to get back to work, when economy is going to be thriving again. And they're just going to keep on going in this uncertainty, this ever increasing situation of poverty. And we're basically betraying the people we were supposed to help in the first place.
Here's a better question for you. You're in a very good age group where we're now looking at the fall and we're looking to send kids back to colleges. How has the lockdown and the COVID-19 crisis changed university knowledge, university going? You're now seeing universities are saying, hey, you don't have to come back. We're going to do it all online. Well, I think now we're starting to see where the absorption of knowledge and education, I think it's being disrupted in a big way. I think universities, we're going to see about a third of them disappear over the next coming 5 years. What do you think about school these days and universities? And what do you think about the fall opening up? You think kids should go back to school?
That is a very big question. I think that Trump, I just reading about it, Trump mentioned that if leftist indoctrination continues on university campus, they're going to lose their tax exempt status, they're going to lose federal funding. And I don't know how he plans on making it, turning this into, I guess, a tangible, something that he can actually go and chase them for. I don't know how how the law is going to be written or the order is going to be written. But if that does happen, which sounds very, I guess, it doesn't sound very concrete. But if that does happen, where universities lose their tax exempt status and they lose federal funding, I think it will be hard for a lot of them to get past this. I think that they make money on other different ways, not just classes, and it's going to be hard to explain $50,000 year tuition for something that you can learn online, because there's other things, right? There's other aspects of education that should be accounted for. There's, for example, children should be able to interact with each other to build their social self-esteem, to build their social abilities. So if you're having everything online, first of all, am I still paying taxes for public schools? Because those buildings, they're sitting there, they're ramping up, they have, fixed costs. They have fixed costs to pay for those buildings that are not being used. So my tax dollars are being wasted that way. And so it does add to a different thing as to school choice. If I just have to, put my kid in front of a computer, maybe there's something else. Maybe there's more ability to choose in regards to the curriculum. There's different choices that I can apply my child's time towards, and they're a bit more beneficial towards, the education that I want them to have, and perhaps even more affordable than sending them to school. Now, you also have to think about the fact that, parents are, so maybe there is a new upcoming business in that sense of like universities are going to turn into just regular schooling online to I don't think a whole lot of people are going to be focusing on degrees later on, especially the way that degrees are being devaluated. But also parents need to drop off their kids somewhere. So, one of the things with my nonprofit was, for example, they have to go to work, so they have to drop off their kids somewhere. So one of the things that my nonprofit, another way that I found to add value was to create neighborhood groups in which, let's say, somebody is a stay-home mom and she is able to watch, kids for this day, and then another mom has this day off, or maybe Wednesday off, so she's able to watch a couple kids on that day, and so it kind of like helps in that sense.
Community
Um,
daycare.
yeah, yeah. But also, we have to think about, the parents are going to be leaving the house, where the kids are going to stay. And so if
You
we're
know,
able to solve that problem, then, I'm all for it.
one of the biggest problems that I think we're seeing in America now is the lack of entrepreneurialism being inspired to the youth of today. You look at a lot of young people now that are creating digital courses, digital master classes, where you can basically spend 45, 55, $90, learn a 3.5 hour course on how to make money. And literally on that same day, you can start making money. Problem is, we're not seeing enough what I consider hustlers, go-getters, drivers, people that are out there chasing the cheddar.
Yeah, and I think that is, that is related to how our society is being set up, where people are actually their, children are going to school and they're being told that their future is going to college, getting a degree in whatever, hopefully getting an internship into a Fortune 500 company and working the rest of their lives in a cubicle. Um, this is the goal. All these kids are trying so hard to get in college, in a good college. For what? You're just going to work in a cubicle for a big company forever. You're just going to die of a heart attack at an early age. They're
God,
not.
hopefully not.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much stress. Trust me, I have experience in corporate America. I felt like at times at the age of 26, I was ready to have a heart attack because there's so many different things, and you're sitting at this desk all day. It's very unhealthy. So people need to be able to follow their dreams. At one point, they just lose it. They just feel like it's not, society is not providing them the leadership and the support required to go there. They feel like almost like they're going against the tide, by choosing to avoid college or avoid that 10 years of formal education and just pursuing something else. I feel like if I told my mom I don't want to go to college, I want $1,000 to put towards this course because I want to do this and that, she would just be like, "You're crazy." It's the way that society is set up that doesn't necessarily you know push kids in that direction.
It's been fun learning your perspective, because I think sometimes we have to take a moment and listen attentively to other people's perspective. And you have a unique perspective from where you're at in life right now. Tell us, as we wrap things up, talk a little bit about your roadmap, your future. What are some of the things that you see yourself doing over the next 6, 12, 18 months?
So I want to I I went to law school in Brazil. As I moved here, all of those credits were absolutely wasted. I had to get back in school. So I have been going to college for forever, trying to get, advance as much as I can because I'm in the corporate sector. I work in corporate finance. So, those degrees and titles count. So I see myself being in college forever just for you know, the little line on my resume. Nothing more than that, because I don't see a lot of value being gained from that. So within the next few months, I've been working on getting multiple technical certifications, which I hope to acquire them soon. And they will actually make an impact on my salary, on my knowledge, because they're very specific knowledge and career pathways. They're going to benefit me much more than just a generalized diploma. So I'm going to finish those. I want to focus on my writing. I want to focus on community activism. I
Talk
want
a
to
little
see.
bit about your writing. What are you writing these days?
So I write a lot about things like economy, politics, And you can find my work in twitter.com/realjuliasong. And I post a lot of my articles there. And I think that it's a unique perspective, basically.
Well, listen, I can't thank you enough for taking time today. Talk a little bit about your perspective on things. It's always good to understand and listen to different perspectives, and yours has been fresh and refreshing. I think as you look around at some of the masterclass millionaires that we have on our site, I think there's some really good people that you'll find that you can connect with. Chris Johnson, I'll even send you some good introductions, because I think what you're desperately needing, and what a lot of people are desperately needing, is to surround themselves with people that are entrepreneurs, that are go-getters, that are street hustlers, people that are actually going out there every single day and just doing something and making it happen. And I think that that's something that America is lacking tremendously. But the people that are seeking that, they can find it. There's people out there doing it. And I think every day you have a choice. You can get up and chase your goals, or you can sit around waiting for your goals to come to you. And that's just never going to happen. And your perspective has been refreshing. It's been great. I love learning about your story in Brazil. It makes you appreciate America a lot more.
Thank you so much for having me.
You got it, Julia. I will talk to you soon. I wish you nothing but the best. Have a great day. Peace out. Everyone here, if you want to follow Julia, her links will be at the bottom, and you can check her out. She is definitely a worthwhile follow.